She walked in holding his hand, not mine, his, her boss. Lips glossy, cheeks flush, stilettos stabbing the floor like she owned the place. They didn't sneak in, didn't slink through a side door. No, they entered like royalty. Mid-toast. My toast. Here's to building something that lasts, I had just said. Champagne raised, cameras flashing, dozens of partners, clients, former judges, even the mayor's economic liaison clapping politely as I smiled like a fool. Then silence. They reached the front. He wore that smug, wolfish grin. She smiled like a woman who believed she'd won. Her free hand, perfectly manicured in a color I used to pay attention to, held out a manila envelope. "Your first case," she said, eyes glittering. "Our divorce. File it and leave." I looked at her, at the man beside her, at the camera still filming. She kissed his cheek. He chuckled, and behind them the whispers began like roaches behind drywall. "Isn't that his wife? That's her boss, right?" Spineless, Jesus. The envelope was still in her hand. When I didn't take it, she leaned in and tucked it into my breast pocket like she was adjusting a boutonniere. "Be a dear, don't make a scene," she murmured. "There's press here." I didn't make a scene. I nodded, smiled politely to the confused crowd. Then I walked off stage, through the hallway, out the front doors, leaving my own name embossed in gold behind me. What none of them knew, what she never cared enough to ask, was that I don't argue. I don't plead, I don't threaten. I just act. By the time their laughter started fading behind me, I was already logging into my private console. Because while they had a plan for drama, I had a blueprint for annihilation. More than 97% of people just read these and scroll. Don't be like them. Tap subscribe. It motivates the team behind these stories to keep delivering. And trust me, it's about to get a lot more interesting. Anyway, what struck me most wasn't the betrayal. It was the presentation, the performative cruelty of it all. She wanted it to be memorable, something to whisper about over martinis. Her victory lap in stilettos and false lashes, the gall of her choosing my firm's launch, something I built brick by goddamn brick, as the stage for her little soap opera. And him? He smirked like a man who thought he had just acquired another asset, another trophy to hang on his overcompensating wall of glass and steel. What he didn't realize was that he had just acquired my full attention. They thought I was the background character, the quiet, forgettable man in tailored gray suits who paid the bills and smiled through clenched teeth. But every asset I ever touched, every client I'd ever advised, every financial tool I ever sharpened, I did quietly, strategically, with intention. I didn't cry, I didn't drink, I didn't scream into the void. I went home, slipped off my shoes, poured myself a glass of water, sat down at my desk, and I started pulling levers. First, every joint account, frozen. Then all household utilities, bills, insurances, disconnected. Her credit cards, cut at the root. The house she flaunted on Instagram, title transfer pending, contingent on funds she no longer had access to. But that was just the dressing. The real move? The stake. $88 million quietly nestled in a tech firm her boss co-founded 5 years ago. A firm that wouldn't exist without my silent capital, layered behind shellcore and investment shadows. He never asked who the money came from, just smiled when it arrived. Tonight, I pulled it. And that's when the machine began to break. Not explode, break. Loud things draw attention. Quiet disassembly, that makes them paranoid, makes them start doubting each other. She handed me a manila envelope thinking she'd humiliate me. She doesn't realize I was already holding the pen that signs their futures. And tomorrow, that's when the fun begins. The first thing I did when I got home was take off my watch. Not because I needed comfort, because I needed time to move on my time. There's something sacred about shedding the uniform of the day, especially when the whole damn day was a setup. Shirt off, sleeves rolled. The laptop's biometric scanner lit up blue and green. It knew me better than she ever did. I didn't hesitate. The secure console booted. No bells, no fireworks, just lines of code, tabs, toggles, my playground. This wasn't revenge. It was arithmetic. Pressure applied at precise points. Joint checking, frozen. Her name flagged. Emergency reserve accounts, revoked. Mortgage auto payments, halted. Household cards, terminated. Every last one. The Tesla she loved for brunch selfies, registered under a business lease. Lease terminated. I paused only once when I hovered over the folder labeled Contingencies, dull name, deadly content. There it was, the file I prepared almost 2 years ago, after the second time she forgot to come home from a conference. Didn't accuse her then, didn't even raise my voice. But I made a quiet decision that night, right there in bed, staring at the ceiling while she snored through tequila breath. Next time, I don't react. I trigger. I open the file. One click. A chain began. Liquidation request. $88 million. Source, diversified stake portfolio tied to Devon Tech, a firm co-founded and still privately held in large part by none other than her boss, Mr. Smirk himself. Result, shares dumped, capital pulled, partnership clause B7.3 triggered. That one's important. We'll get there. People think the stock market reacts to numbers. It doesn't. It reacts to confidence. Pull the right sum at the right hour, and you don't just drain liquidity, you drain faith. Her boss would feel the tremor before he even saw the ledger. Next up, legal authority sweep. Every power of attorney privilege she had, gone. Healthcare proxies revoked. Beneficiary designations reassigned. And here's the thing, it wasn't frantic. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't even angry. I was efficient. Resentment had calcified into something colder, like a surgeon removing rot before it spreads, precision without pause. At 1:14 a.m., I sent one message to my assistant. Pull everything, no delay. You know which folders. She replied with a thumbs-up emoji and a zipped file named Closure Kit. That made me laugh. And while somewhere, my soon-to-be ex was probably sipping champagne beside a man whose company was now legally wobbling beneath him like a cheap IKEA chair, I was preparing the next steps, not to win her back, not to get even, just to clarify something she'd forgotten. I wasn't spineless. I was silent, and silence has a half-life longer than rage. By 2:00 a.m., I'd done what most men never bother doing until it's too late. I had reasserted full control over everything I once generously co-managed. I didn't care if she noticed yet, she would. The real question was whether he would notice before or after the floor gave out. They chose to make a spectacle. I chose systems. Because systems don't lie. They don't cheat. And when calibrated correctly, they don't miss. At 2:47 a.m., I shut the laptop, stood up, and poured myself a glass of cold tap water. It tasted better than any champagne she ever made me drink. At precisely 8:06 a.m., she tried to pay for her oat milk latte and her assistant's breakfast wrap using her corporate Amex. Declined. She laughed, tried again. Declined. She turned to her assistant and said, "Ugh, probably fraud protection. It happens." Smiled like nothing was wrong, but already her brow was furrowing. That card had a 6-figure monthly limit. Fraud protection had never happened before. So she pulled out her personal card. Declined. No laughter this time. Just a slow, burning pause. Her phone buzzed. An SMS from the card provider. Access restricted. Contact account holder. That account holder was me. She called. Number no longer in service. She blinked, stared at her screen like it owed her an apology. Hit redial. Nothing. The coffee shop suddenly felt colder. She didn't finish the latte. 3 miles away, her boss, still riding high from his little power play at my launch, was stepping into his glass-walled corner office when his CFO knocked. Something's off. 2 words he hates more than federal audit. They pulled up the dashboard. Capital drawdown, 88 million red. Frozen partner distributions. Systemic cash choke across their VC pipeline. The investment layer built on shadow firms, mine, was unraveling, slowly, surgically, and with zero forewarning. He called investor relations. "Get me the controlling partner on line 4. "Sir," his assistant replied, "they say they were never controlling partners. Silent capital only. Their rep won't take the call." Now he was sweating. He tried calling the law firm, the one with my name on the door. The one where he strutted in yesterday like a game show host claiming a prize. No answer. Not just from reception, anyone. Phones rang out, emails bounced, a full legal blackout. I'd ordered the firm into silent protocol. They were all briefed, no one speaks until I say otherwise. Every file about his firm was sealed under client attorney privilege and locked into red status encryption. Even subpoenas wouldn't get through without my key. That's when it hit him. This wasn't damage control territory. This was scorched earth, and he wasn't holding the map. Meanwhile, my wife, let's call her Delia for now, since Darling is permanently retired, was starting to understand the shape of the hole she'd jumped into head first. She returned to her office suite, tried logging into our shared document vault to pull prenup details. Access denied. She dialed the bank manager we used for 5 years, the one who used to call her ma'am and ask how the Bali trip was. Ma'am, your access has been restricted by the primary account holder. I'm the primary. No, ma'am. You're the secondary. Effective 4:17 a.m., all permissions were revoked by Mr. Graves. She didn't hang up so much as drop the phone. Her assistant tried to say something about a morning meeting. She just waved her off and stared at the wall like it had personally betrayed her. She messaged me on Signal, then WhatsApp, then Telegram, then Gmail, then an old backup email I hadn't used since 2014. Not one reply. Because I wasn't ghosting her, I was closing her access to the world she built on top of me while pretending I was the soil. By 10 a.m., the market was reacting, subtle at first. Whispers about Devon-Tech's liquidity structure, rumors about a high-level investor pullout. Then came the actual cash freeze. Partner firms began locking contracts. Pending deals were paused, and her boss, Mr. Smirk, was now in full sprint mode behind closed doors, red-faced and blaming interns. What they never realized, what they never bothered to ask, was just how fragile their little empire was. Without me, the power wasn't in my name. It was in the quiet documents, the capital architecture, the legal tripwires no one thought to question because I never demanded attention. That's the thing about being underestimated for years. You learn how to build pressure in silence. You don't scream when it explodes. You just watch the oxygen disappear from the room they thought was theirs. By noon, he wasn't walking anymore. He was storming. Double time. Through the hallway of frosted glass and polished concrete, barking at every assistant who dared make eye contact. His tie hung loose, his collar open, sweat creeping along the rim of his temples. Where the hell is legal? But legal wasn't waiting. Compliance was. A woman in a navy skirt suit stepped into his path, clipboard in hand, not flinching as he thundered toward her. "Mr. Brenwick," she said calmly, "you'll want to sit for this." He didn't. She handed him a stapled packet with flagged pages. He barely skimmed the header. Clause 971, Fiduciary Realignment Trigger. Clause 11.4, Emergency Capital Withdrawal. Clause 14.2, Partner Confidence Threshold. At the bottom of the summary, termination initiated due to irreconcilable divergence of key partners' fiduciary objectives. Translation: I pulled the plug, he couldn't stop it, and everything he thought was secure was now paper. "Who approved this?" he demanded. Her answer was clinical. It was pre-authorized, contingent, tied to capital anchor codes. Mr. Graves' authorization dated back 6 fiscal quarters, retroactively valid upon unilateral withdrawal. He blinked. Retroactive? What the hell does that even mean? "It means you didn't read what you signed," she said, "and now your entire protective clause framework has collapsed." That's the thing about men like him. They bluff with loud voices, confident strides, designer cufflinks, and a Rolodex of second-tier attorneys who bill more hours than they win. But none of that mattered now, because his firm's capital base wasn't a fortress. It was a tent held up by stakes I had already removed. Somewhere between his last mocking toast and this exact moment, I had walked away and taken the floor with me. His phone rang. He didn't answer. Too many calls. Too many red flags. Meanwhile, my wife, Delia, was getting her own quiet earthquake. A letter, hand-delivered, no return address. Mortgage reassignment. She stared at it like it was written in hieroglyphs. The home she bragged about on social media, gave tours of like it was Versailles, had a clause tucked into its very foundation. In the event of legal partition or financial isolation of co-owner, property control shall default to primary title holder. That was me. She tried calling the broker. He referred her to the reassignment team. She asked for a supervisor. They said, "There's nothing to escalate. The paperwork's final." Then came the second envelope, notice of vehicle lease termination. The Tesla, the one she drove to Pilates and called her midlife therapy, was already scheduled for pickup. She texted me, "What are you doing?" This isn't fair. At least talk to me. I didn't answer, not because I didn't know what to say, but because the silence was the message. You don't light the fuse and then complain the room's on fire. That afternoon, Delia walked into her old Pilates class and was greeted with hesitant half smiles. People had seen the launch video, the clip, the envelope. Someone had captioned it "Divorce Level Savage." She'd tagged me in photos of that same crowd for years. Now she barely met their eyes because the buzz wasn't about the divorce anymore. It was about the fallout and the fact that no one could find me, not even my old law partners. I wasn't hiding. I had just exited the building before it collapsed. There's a myth we tell ourselves that betrayal is a storm, a crashing crescendo. But the truth is, it's quieter, slower, like stepping onto a bridge that was there yesterday and realizing today it's gone. I didn't take revenge. I just left. Quietly, legally, totally. And now they were learning the hard way. When you gamble on someone being weak, you better make damn sure he's not the one holding the deed. The apartment was never meant to be permanent. A corner unit, 15th floor, nothing flashy, gray walls, matte black fixtures, the kind of minimalist design you only appreciate when your life is too full of noise. I signed the lease 7 months ago, paid in full, 6 digits wired through a shell LLC with a meaningless name. No one knew, not Delia, not the firm, not the building's doorman. To them, I was just another quiet man who didn't bother with small talk. Tonight it was silent, not just quiet, perfectly silent. I sat by the floor-to-ceiling window, legs crossed, drink untouched, not liquor, club soda. My vice was never alcohol. It was control. And tonight that meant letting the silence stretch until it pulled the nerves of everyone who'd once tried to dance on my bones. The phone buzzed once, twice, a third time. I didn't look. I didn't need to. The real message wasn't in what was said. It was in what I refused to hear. Eventually, I flipped the screen face up. 121 missed calls. Her, him, his CFO, her mother, his lawyer, our former friends, even one from a hedge fund exec who hadn't returned my emails in 2 years. I tapped Do Not Disturb. Then I opened a fresh notebook. On the first page, notify Brennan, federal judge, Southern District, owed me a favor. Ms. Chen, estate planning, sharp, discreet. Wexler and Keene, PR firm, NDA on file. Alan R., former partner, knows what to do. Langston, divorce specialist, surgical. No tweets, no interviews, no grand announcements. Controlled silence is louder than any press conference, because when the world assumes you're broken, disappearing without a trace makes them panic. But being found, measured, composed, inconveniently stable, that terrifies them. While I wrote, somewhere across town, Delia was unraveling. Her inbox was a war zone. Frozen board appointments, 2 pulled endorsements, and a digital notification. Pending review of public misconduct. Apparently one of the clients at the launch was from the state bar. Guess he didn't like the performance. Then came the formal notice. The bar had opened an ethics review into her conduct and her disclosure obligations regarding interpersonal relationships with senior clients. Translation: you brought your lover to your husband's firm and kissed him mid-toast on camera. Genius. Her boss, ex-boss, depending on when the next board vote landed, was already fielding concerns from shareholders. Not about the money, surprisingly. That came later. The first wave was all about perception, optics, and the optics were horrific. The image of him laughing while I was handed divorce papers? Viral. I'd gotten a screenshot forwarded from an anonymous number captioned, "Investment advice, don't F over lawyers." They read the fine print. My phone vibrated again. Another call. Then 3 texts. Delia, I didn't think you'd do all this. Can we talk? Please. I put the phone down and turned the page in my notebook. On it, I drew a box. Inside, rebuild. New firm name. Quiet Partners. Office space, not downtown. Security audit, no more trust. I'd lost the illusion of a marriage. But I hadn't lost myself. That's the part that broke them. Not the money, not the legal dismantling. It was the simple, devastating fact that I didn't chase, didn't beg, didn't react. I removed them like an infection. No drama, no mess. Just a scalpel to the source and a steady hand. The city hummed below, neon reflections on polished floors. I sat there as the world assumed I was hurting. Let them assume. Let her cry into silence. Let him yell into boardrooms. I had the quiet now, and I had the pen. 9:47 p.m. 3 soft knocks. Hesitant. Not the confident kind you get from friends or delivery guys. This knock had sweat behind it. I didn't check the peephole. I already knew. There was only one person who'd be this late, this desperate, and still think he had the right to my time. I opened the door, slowly, deliberately, and there he stood, Mr. Smirk himself, except the smirk was gone, replaced by a tight jaw, wide eyes, and the kind of nervous energy you usually see in men pacing courtroom lobbies minutes before sentencing. He looked smaller without an audience, suit jacket gone, sleeves rolled, tie crooked, hairline glistening. "Graves," he said, breath short like he'd jogged the hallway. "We need to talk." I let the silence sit between us. A full 5 seconds. No greeting, no question, just air. "There are things," he continued, "you don't understand. About the firm, about Delia, about what's happening." "You're sweating," I interrupted. "That new for you?" His lips tightened. "I'm trying to come to you man to man." "That your strong suit?" He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Okay, listen. Yes, maybe the launch was ill-advised, but it was her idea. Theatrics, stupid, I'll admit that. I should have stopped her. But this vendetta, you're tanking the whole firm. Ours. Yours, technically." I tilted my head. "That so?" He nodded like a bobblehead. "Yes, you're part of this. You benefit from the success of Devon Tech. You can't just pull out. There are contracts, investors, relationships." I let that sit. Then I stepped back half an inch, just enough to make him think he was about to be let inside. I wasn't. "You were confused," I said, voice low. "I wasn't your partner." His mouth opened. "I was your investor," I continued, silent until now. He took a step forward, hand partially raised like he thought we might shake on something. I put my hand on the edge of the door. "And now you're here in a building you don't live in, asking for favors you haven't earned after using my marriage like a conference table centerpiece." He opened his mouth again, but I didn't give him the chance. "Leave before I call building security." For the first time since I met him, he didn't have a comeback. No charm, no fake apology, no legalese, just a flicker of dread behind the eyes. The dawning realization that the man he thought was background noise was the one who'd quietly been underwriting his entire illusion of dominance. He stepped back, 2 slow paces, like he wasn't sure if turning his back on me was smart. I shut the door, mid-blink. He didn't knock again. Inside, I turned off the lights, walked to the kitchen, and let the dark wrap around me. Not like a blanket, more like armor, reinforced by silence, tempered in control. He'd thought I was the problem. He didn't understand yet. I was the stability, the structure, the invisible hand holding up the firm, the facade, and yes, even her. And I had simply let go. He wanted a conversation. What he got was the edge of the cliff, and I hadn't even started pushing yet. She didn't knock, not really, more like a soft pat, a test to see if the door was locked. It wasn't. I heard it creak open around 7:15 a.m., the sound of hesitation, then light footsteps, bare feet on tile, the kind that try not to be heard but hope desperately to be noticed. I didn't turn around. I was already in the kitchen, pouring hot water over fresh grounds. The French press hissed, filling the silence. I'd gotten used to mornings like this, measured, wordless, balanced. "Jason," she said softly, her voice bare, unpolished, no makeup to smooth it, no perfume to mask the fear. I glanced sideways, hair pulled back in a loose knot, sweatshirt over pajamas. Her eyes looked like they hadn't closed all night. And for once, she wasn't performing. No theatrics, no practiced tone, just a woman unraveling. "I didn't know," she started, fingers fidgeting with the sleeve cuff, that he used your name, the shares, the firm. I thought the investors were his. I didn't know you were part of it." She stepped closer. No heels this time. No platform to tower from. Just bare skin against a cold floor she never thought she'd stand on. I stirred my coffee slowly, watched the swirl settle. "I made a mistake," she said, "and this time It cracked, not the kind of crack you fake for sympathy, the kind that slips out when denial starts to die. Still, I didn't speak. I didn't mean for it to happen like this, she said. It started simple. He complimented me, noticed when you didn't, made me feel seen, and then I thought. She trailed off, realizing halfway through how pathetic it sounded when said out loud. It was stupid, I know, but I didn't think, God, Jason, I didn't think you were him. I finally turned, coffee in hand. No, I said. You didn't. We stood there, the weight of her choices suspended in that tiny room. She looked at me like a drowning person recognizing the shoreline they swam away from. You did make a mistake, I said. Her eyes flickered. Hope? Maybe. Maybe she thought this was the beginning of forgiveness, the first breadcrumb on a trail back to comfort, but not the one you think. Her brows knit, lips parting to ask, but I didn't offer more, because the mistake wasn't infidelity. I'd expected that long before the hotel receipts and late meetings. The mistake was something deeper. She handed control of my name to a man who didn't earn it. She leveraged my silence like it was absence. She let another man weaponize me, and she handed him the keys. It wasn't just betrayal, it was negligence. She didn't just lie. She let herself believe I was irrelevant. And that ignorance, that arrogance, that was the part that had no fix. I can undo this, she said, stepping closer. We can undo it. I'll talk to the board. Clear your name. My name was never dirty, I interrupted. She froze. I took a sip. Let the coffee coat my tongue. Let the quiet push her back an inch. You think this is damage control, I said. It's not. It's recognition of how easily you handed your life to a man who barely knew how to tie his own future. Tears welled, not dramatic ones, just the silent kind that slipped down without warning. The kind born from finally seeing the edge of the cliff she danced along. You were always so quiet, she whispered. I didn't think you'd ever fight back. I didn't. I set the cup down, walked past her. I didn't fight, I said. I just stopped holding up your world. She didn't follow me out of the kitchen. She didn't ask for another chance. Not yet. She just stood there, in the apartment she never knew existed, finally seeing the man she'd married and how far from him she'd drifted. And I didn't feel anger. I felt confirmation, because you can only be betrayed by someone you've trusted. But to be used, that takes a special kind of blindness. And she finally saw it. The summons landed on his desk at 8:03 a.m., hand-delivered by a man in a black windbreaker with OCC stitched discreetly on the sleeve. Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, not SEC, not a civil inquiry. Federal. The envelope wasn't thick, but the weight was unmistakable. The kind of weight that only arrives when the United States government decides your numbers don't add up. He didn't open it right away. He just stared, then asked his assistant, voice barely above a whisper, Who sent this? She didn't know. He ripped the seal open and pulled the single-page cover letter. It began, Formal notification of pending review, investment filing irregularities and misattribution of controlling interest. He stopped reading halfway through the second paragraph. An anonymous complaint had been submitted, complete with exhibits, detailed attachments, source material that wasn't just accurate, it was internal, board meeting minutes, cap table breakdowns, audit logins, off-ledger capital flow diagrams with timestamps, a trail leading directly to the firm's core, and one name consistently appearing on the founding documents, layered beneath holding firms, investment vehicles, blind trusts, mine. Except now I wasn't there. Not on paper, not on signature lines, not as a shield to absorb what came next, because I never filed those final signatures. I had invested in silence, but I'd never ceded full control. And now, with that silence revoked, they were exposed. He spun around in his chair, sweating through his undershirt, and hit the intercom. Get me legal, now. A pause. They're not here, sir? His assistant replied. What do you mean, not here? They resigned, all of them, early this morning, effective immediately. He stood, knocking over his chair. Papers scattered. The envelope crumpled underfoot as he stormed out of his office into the glass hallway, where two junior analysts were already whispering behind tablets, their faces pale. The news was leaking. Of course it was. A tweet had gone out 12 minutes earlier from a financial watchdog account. Breaking. Anonymous whistleblower exposes controlling interest misrepresentation at Devon Tech. Federal review pending. Sources say signature authorization fraud at executive level. And beneath that, shadow stake Nauard investor ghost. Whose graves? The hashtag trended within the hour. By 9:00 a.m., the building was surrounded. Cameras, reporters, people with microphones and battery packs shouting questions no one dared answer. He tried to hold it together, barked orders to PR, to investor relations, to anyone still dumb enough to pick up the phone. But the board had already called an emergency session. Virtual, private, he wasn't invited at first. And when he finally dialed in, half the faces on the screen wouldn't look directly at him because they knew. One woman, gray-haired and composed, finally spoke what the others were only thinking. "You told us Graves was a passive shell investor," he stammered. She continued, "You told us all strategic authority had been transferred, but there's no record of that. No authorization on file, no countersignature. He never relinquished his position, which means," another board member cut in, "which means we misrepresented controlling interest to regulators." Silence. The kind that hurts. One by one, the call screens dropped. Cameras off. Session ended. By 9:47 a.m., the front page of 3 business sites ran a story. Devon Tech implodes amid federal review. Whistleblower exposes leadership fraud. They used a still frame from the law firm launch. Me in the background, holding the manila envelope. Expression unreadable. The headline beneath the image. The silent exit that shattered the boardroom. Delia saw it too. She texted me again. "They're saying you leaked it. Did you? Please say something." I didn't, because I hadn't leaked anything. I'd simply passed along the truth to the exact agency responsible for protecting people from men like him. Truth doesn't need a PR firm, it just needs oxygen. And now that the oxygen had hit the spark, collapse wasn't coming. It had already begun. 3 days later, I walked into the Fairmont Ballroom at 6:02 p.m. sharp. Tailored charcoal suit, subtle herringbone, polished Oxfords. No tie, just a deep navy shirt, collar crisp, open just enough to breathe. I hadn't been seen in public since the launch debacle. Let them wonder. Let them write headlines. Tonight was not about a comeback. Comebacks imply you ever left. The event was a gala for emerging market relief funds, something I'd supported quietly for years. But this time, I wasn't tucked into the back row writing checks. I was center room, flanked by 2 new partners, younger, smarter than I'd been at their age. One had worked in sovereign fund restructuring in Eastern Europe. The other dismantled predatory lending groups in West Africa. Both respected me because I never needed to brag. And tonight, they stood just behind me. Deliberate placement. The photographers noticed. So did the donors. And the press. A reporter from the Ledger caught me near the bar, recorder half hidden behind her wine glass. "Mr. Graves," she began, smiling with the practiced warmth of someone used to guarded men, "can I ask about the Devon Tech fallout?" I took a sip of sparkling water, set the glass down. "Unethical associations require amputation," I said. "Clean, immediate, preferably without anesthetic." She blinked, then grinned. "So the rumors about whistleblower files?" I smiled politely. "Rumors are just truths waiting on documentation." Another question hovered behind her eyes. I could see it before it left her mouth. "And your wife?" This time I didn't smile. "She made her choice," I said. "I simply ensured she lived with it." Click. The flash went off. That quote would run in 6 publications by midnight. A few feet away, I noticed a familiar face, Delia's former friend, Amanda, the one who used to clink glasses with her at rooftop brunches and whisper about which men were worth upgrading for. Now she stood frozen, mid-champagne sip, watching me from the corner of her eye like I was an exhibit she hadn't realized was dangerous. I nodded once. She looked away. At the far end of the ballroom, I saw a different kind of face, one from the DOJ. Civil Compliance Division. No smile, no small talk, just a subtle nod, the kind you exchange between professionals who've both seen the inside of too many deal rooms and know how fast fortunes rot. The program started. Speeches, pledges, applause. I stayed until dessert, not because I wanted recognition, because I wanted them to see the silent husband they laughed at, the man they thought could be handed papers like a party trick, The background investor. The cautionary tale. I was none of those. I was the scalpel, not the wound. At 9:34 p.m., I stood to leave. A different reporter called out behind me. "Mr. Graves, what's next?" I paused, turned my head slightly. "Building something better," I said, "with people who don't mistake patience for weakness." Then I walked out. Not one camera flash followed, but every whisper did. The door clicked once, then opened halfway. "Mr. Graves," my assistant said gently, stepping inside, "there's one final item from the envelope." It was stuck between the pages. She held it out, flat gloved fingers, manila. Familiar, the same envelope Delia had handed me with a smirk not so long ago. But this wasn't divorce paperwork. This was separate, personal, sealed, notarized. I took it without a word and waited for the door to close again before opening it. Her handwriting. I recognized it immediately. The loops and the D's, the habit of underlining her lowercase i's like a teenager. But this time, the ink was steady, almost too steady. Like she'd rehearsed every letter, rewritten it until the right level of desperation landed. "Jason, I know you won't respond, and I deserve that, but you should know." I didn't know. Not really. Not about the firm, not about what he was doing with your name. I was stupid, careless, vain. I traded something real for applause from people who disappear when the cameras do. I didn't fall in love with him. I fell in love with the version of myself he reflected. And I hate that it took all this for me to see what I did, what I broke. This isn't a plea to undo things. It's just an admission. You were always more than I gave you credit for, and I was always less than I pretended to be. I hope someday you let yourself be seen again, truly seen, because you deserved more than silence, even if you weaponized it flawlessly. Delia, I read it once, then again, then I reached for the last page, a standard signature sheet, witnessed and notarized, not a legal document, just a symbolic one, an admission under oath. I signed beneath her name, not as a gesture of forgiveness, not as closure, as acknowledgement. Then I slipped it into a plain folder, no label, no tabs, no color, just one word on the spine, closed. I stood, stretched the stiffness from my shoulders, and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window of the new office. No skyline, no penthouse view, just a broad stretch of road, cars, movement, a city that didn't care about betrayals or balances, only momentum. Outside, life continued, indifferent, beautiful for it. Behind me, no applause, no dramatic music, just the faint hum of the HVAC and the faint scent of fresh wood from new furniture. My reflection in the glass wasn't smiling, it wasn't broken either, just calm. I reached into my breast pocket, took out the old pen I hadn't used since the day of the launch, and clicked it once. "Case dismissed," I said quietly, then added, "with prejudice."